I never thought a simple visit could change everything. It was a sunny afternoon when my son-in-law, Michael, called with a request that made my blood run cold. "Mom," he said in that too sweet voice of his, "we'd like to bring my parents up to the house for a visit next weekend." It shouldn't have been such a big deal, I suppose. People bring family over all the time, don't they? But something in his tone didn't sit right with me. I'd spent my entire life building this home in the woods, away from the noise of the world, with only the trees and the birds for company. I'd worked so hard to make it mine, to create a space where I could breathe, where I could finally find peace after all these years. And now, he wanted to bring strangers into it, his parents, people I didn't know, people I didn't want to know. I tried to hide my unease, told him it was fine, that I'd prepare for their visit, but inside, I could feel something stirring, something that told me this wouldn't be a visit at all. It would be the beginning of something much bigger, much darker. Before I tell you what happened next, would you do me a favor? Hit that subscribe button, turn on the little bell, and let me know where you're watching from. It really helps us know where these stories are reaching. My name is Doris, and I'm 72 years old. I've lived in this little house in the woods for more than 20 years now, ever since my husband passed away. It was his dream, you know, to have a home like this, a place of solitude, tucked away from the world. But when he died, I couldn't bring myself to leave. So, I stayed. My daughter, Emily, visits often with her family, but it's always been on my terms. I like things quiet, simple. I don't need much, just a hot cup of coffee in the mornings, the sound of the wind rustling through the trees, and the comfort of knowing I've done things my way. I'm a creature of habit, and I like it that way. But Michael, well, he was different. He always had a way of pushing, of trying to change things. And now, with this request, I felt that push again. Only this time, I wasn't going to let him have his way. It was a peaceful morning when Michael called. And the sun was just beginning to filter through the kitchen windows, casting soft light on the old wooden table where I had my coffee. I thought about it for a moment, my fingers tracing the rim of my mug. Why did this feel wrong? The more I thought about it, the more unsettled I became. Michael's parents had never been mentioned much before. He never spoke of them, never seemed to care about their opinion on anything. So why now? Why did they need to come to my house in the woods, a place I had kept so private for so long? I decided I wouldn't ask him directly. Some questions, I knew, could only be answered by time. And time would tell me everything I needed to know. As I sat there, I found myself staring out the window, watching the trees sway gently in the breeze. They had always been my companions, the constant in my life, just as the house had been. I had worked hard to make it my own, to carve out a space where no one could intrude. But I knew, deep down, that Michael and his parents weren't just coming to visit. They were coming to claim something, to change something that had been mine for far too long. And I wasn't about to let them. Not without a fight. I got up and went to the drawer where I kept the old family photos, each one telling a story I'd lived and loved. There were pictures of my daughter as a little girl, of me and my late husband smiling on a trip to the beach, of moments that had shaped my life. But as I shuffled through them, I realized something. I didn't have any pictures of Michael. Not one. He'd been a part of my daughter's life for years, but he was never truly a part of mine. And now, he was trying to step into the very heart of my home. A place that was sacred, that was mine, and mine alone. I had a feeling this visit would be the beginning of something that would test me in ways I hadn't been tested before. But I was ready. Whatever it was, I would face it head on. Because if there was one thing I had learned in my 72 years, it was this: you don't let anyone walk into your life and take what's yours without a fight. The next Saturday came faster than I expected. And there I was, standing by the kitchen window, watching their car drive up the long, winding dirt road to my house. I tried to prepare myself, tried to tell myself this would be just another visit. But as the car drew closer, something in my chest tightened. The old house, with its wooden beams and worn floors, felt too small for what was about to happen. I had always loved the isolation, the space, but now, it felt like the walls were closing in on me. I watched Michael get out of the car first, all smiles and energy, as usual. He waved up at me, like he hadn't just thrown my world into chaos with his simple request. He looked too comfortable, too at ease, like he belonged here, like he had the right to make decisions about my home. But I didn't feel comfortable. Not one bit. Then came his parents, a pair of strangers in my world. His mother, a small, delicate woman with a nervous smile, and his father, tall and silent, with a look in his eyes that I couldn't quite place. They stood by the car, shifting awkwardly as if they weren't sure where they were. I could feel the weight of their presence, their eyes on me, like they were already sizing me up. When Michael reached the porch, he knocked lightly on the door, like he was expecting a warm greeting. I opened it slowly, my hand trembling just a bit. "Mom," he said with that wide grin, "this is my mom and dad, Linda and Jack." I forced a smile and nodded, stepping aside to let them in. They entered quietly, like visitors at a funeral, hesitant and unsure of how to behave. Linda smiled nervously, while Jack just nodded curtly. They didn't offer to help with their bags, didn't even look at the house they were stepping into. It was as if they were here because it was expected, not because they cared. That's when I knew, this wasn't just about visiting. It wasn't even about family. I led them into the living room, trying my best to make them feel comfortable, but I could tell they weren't used to this kind of place. Their eyes darted around, taking in the worn furniture, the handmade quilts on the couch, the bookshelves filled with memories. I watched them carefully, noticing how they glanced at each other, exchanging looks that didn't sit right with me. My home was old-fashioned, yes. It was lived in, it had stories in every crack and crevice. But it was mine. And these strangers, who didn't know the first thing about my life, were standing there, making silent judgments. "Would you like some coffee?" I asked, trying to break the tension. I didn't know what else to say, but it felt like the right thing to offer. Linda's smile brightened for a moment, and she nodded. Jack, however, just shrugged and sank into the armchair, his eyes already flicking over the room as though he was looking for something. I couldn't tell if he was just uncomfortable or if there was something more to it. But I wasn't going to ask. I made coffee for Linda, trying to keep things light. Trying to ignore the gnawing feeling in the pit of my stomach. Michael sat across from me, chatting away like everything was perfectly normal. He asked about the garden, the weather, how I'd been doing. But I wasn't listening to him. My attention kept drifting back to Jack, his eyes scanning the room, his face unreadable. He was looking for something more than just a casual visit. And that made my skin crawl. The more I tried to make conversation, the more I realized just how out of place they were. They weren't here to get to know me. They weren't here to share stories or enjoy my company. They were here for something else. But what? And why? I didn't have the answers yet, but I was starting to feel like I was playing a game I didn't understand. As the afternoon wore on, the conversation grew stilted. Michael's parents were polite, but they didn't seem to care about anything I had to say. It was like they were simply biding their time, waiting for something, waiting for me to say the wrong thing, or maybe waiting for Michael to make his move. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Not by my family, but by strangers who were slowly, quietly trying to claim what was mine. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Michael suggested a walk in the woods. "It's beautiful out there," he said. "We thought it might help break the ice." I wasn't keen on the idea, but I agreed. I didn't want to be rude. We walked out the back door and into the trees, the silence heavy between us. The woods were quiet, peaceful, but it felt different with them there. Like the trees themselves were holding their breath, waiting for the truth to be revealed. As we walked deeper into the forest, I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. Something was coming, something I wasn't prepared for. I wasn't sure what it was yet, but I could feel it in the air, in the way the branches rustled above us. This wasn't just a visit. It was a test. A test that I wasn't sure I was ready for. As we continued walking through the woods, I could hear the faint sound of leaves crunching underfoot, the only noise breaking the stillness. The air smelled fresh, piney, like it always did out here. But today, the familiar scent did little to calm my nerves. Michael was ahead, chatting with his parents, and I hung back, my mind swirling with questions I hadn't yet asked. Why did they need to be here? Why now? There was something off about this whole situation, and the more I thought about it, the more I was sure that this wasn't just a friendly visit. Linda was walking beside me, making small talk, but I wasn't paying attention to her. My eyes kept drifting back to Michael and Jack, the latter of whom hadn't said much since we started walking. He was keeping to himself, his gaze fixed on the path ahead, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. It was like he didn't care to be here, like he was only following along because he had to. But something in the way he moved, the stiffness in his posture, made me think he was hiding something. I couldn't put my finger on it, but I was certain there was more to Jack than met the eye. We reached a small clearing in the woods, a place I used to visit with my husband when we first built the house. It was quiet here, the sunlight filtering through the trees in golden beams, and for a moment, I felt a pang of nostalgia. But that was quickly replaced by unease as Michael turned to me with an almost too innocent smile. "Mom," he began, "we need to talk." The words felt heavy, like they were carrying something with them, something important. I stopped in my tracks, my heart skipping a beat. "Talk about what?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, though I could feel the anxiety creeping in. He looked over at his father, then back at me, and that's when I saw it. Jack was watching me intently, his eyes narrowing slightly, his lips pressed into a thin line. He wasn't just a bystander in this conversation. He was part of it, and I had a sinking feeling that whatever they were about to tell me wasn't good. "Well, we've been discussing some things," Michael said, his voice slightly strained. "And we think it might be time to make some changes." He hesitated, as though weighing his words carefully. "We were hoping you might be open to selling the house." His words hung in the air, and for a moment, I couldn't process them. Sell the house? This house? The one I had poured my heart and soul into? I felt a coldness wash over me, and I could see that Linda and Jack were both waiting for my response, their faces expectant. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my composure. "Sell the house?" I repeated, barely able to believe what I was hearing. "Why would I sell this house?" Michael shifted uncomfortably, clearly trying to find the right words. "Well," he began, "it's just that. You're getting older, Mom. And this place, it's so far out of the way. It's hard for Emily and the kids to visit, and, well, we've been thinking about the future. It might be better if you moved closer to us, to a place where you could be with family more easily." There it was, the real reason. It wasn't about the house, or me. It was about convenience. It was about what was easiest for them, not what was best for me. I felt my chest tighten, my hands trembling at my sides. This wasn't about caring for me or my well-being. This was about control. They wanted to sell the house, to take it from me, so they could have their lives easier, without considering what it meant to me or the memories this house held. But before I could speak, Jack finally spoke up, his voice low and gruff. "You don't need all this space anymore," he said, his tone cold, almost dismissive. "A smaller house, somewhere in town, closer to us, would be better for you. It's the right thing to do." His words stung, sharper than I'd expected. I glanced at Michael, searching his face for any sign that this wasn't his idea, but all I saw was hesitation. He was going along with it, and that cut deeper than anything Jack had said. I felt a sudden surge of anger, but I kept it in check, knowing I needed to stay calm. I turned away from them, my eyes scanning the woods as I tried to collect my thoughts. The peace of the forest, the calm I usually felt here, was gone, replaced by a sense of betrayal that I couldn't shake. This was my home, my sanctuary. And now they wanted to take it from me, to erase everything I had worked for. The thought was suffocating. "Let me make something clear," I said, my voice steady but firm. "This house is mine. It's not for sale. It's not going anywhere." I looked at Michael, then at Jack. "And you won't force me out of here?" There was a long silence as they processed my words. Michael looked embarrassed, his face turning a shade of red I wasn't used to seeing. Jack, however, was stone-faced, his eyes narrowed as though he was studying me, trying to figure out how far I would go to protect what was mine, but I wasn't going to let them take this from me. Not without a fight. This wasn't just about a house. It was about something deeper. It was about respect. It was about family, and what it really meant to care for someone. And I was about to make sure they understood that. The walk back to the house was silent, the air heavy with unspoken words. I could feel the tension swirling between us, a thick cloud that neither of us could seem to shake. Michael was walking beside me now, his shoulders hunched, his gaze on the ground. Linda and Jack lagged behind, their voices low, though I couldn't catch the words. I wasn't sure if it was guilt or frustration that weighed heavier on Michael's heart. But I could see that he wasn't as sure of himself as he'd been just an hour ago. As we reached the back porch, I turned to him. "Michael," I said, my voice calm but firm, "I don't know what you were expecting, but you can forget about it. I've made my decision." He didn't respond immediately, his lips pressed together in a tight line, and I could see the internal struggle on his face. He had wanted me to bend, to go along with this plan as if I were some kind of willing participant in their scheme. But that wasn't going to happen. Not today. Not ever. He finally looked up at me, his eyes pleading. "Mom, please. It's just for the best. We've been talking about it for a while now. Emily and I think it's time." His words stung, but not as much as the cold, calculating way they were delivered. It was like they had already decided, and I was just supposed to fall in line. I felt my blood boil, but I kept my composure. The anger was there, just beneath the surface, but I wasn't going to let it take over. "Not yet." "You think it's time?" I asked, my voice steady. "Well, I don't. This house is my home. You don't get to decide what's best for me, Michael." His face twisted, his frustration evident now. "Mom, it's not about deciding for you. It's about being practical. About making sure you're safe and happy." But I could see through the words. It wasn't about my safety. It wasn't about happiness. It was about convenience. About getting me out of the way so they could have what they wanted. And that, I would not stand for. Linda stepped forward, her hands wringing together, her expression full of concern. "Doris, we just want what's best for you," she said softly, her voice more timid than I had expected. "We know it's hard, but we're just trying to help." I studied her for a moment. There was something in her eyes, something that made me pause. It wasn't as forceful as Michael's approach, but it was no less manipulative. She wasn't just trying to help. She was trying to make me see it their way, as if there was no other option. "I've been helping myself just fine for years," I replied, my voice calm but unwavering. "I don't need anyone to make decisions for me. I built this house. I've made it my home. And no one, not even my own family, is going to take that from me." Michael opened his mouth, ready to argue, but I raised my hand to stop him. "No more. This conversation is over." The silence that followed was thick, uncomfortable. Jack had remained silent through it all, his eyes fixed on the ground, his face unreadable. But I could feel his presence, the way he was watching me, studying me like I was some kind of puzzle to solve. He didn't say a word, but I knew he didn't like how things were going. Michael's shoulders slumped, and I could see the defeat in his eyes. "You don't get it, do you?" he said quietly. "We're trying to look out for you. You're not getting any younger. You can't keep living out here all by yourself." His words were laced with concern, but beneath that concern, I could hear the underlying accusation. Like I was a burden to him, a problem that needed fixing. "You don't have to do everything on your own anymore, Mom." I felt my chest tighten. "I've been doing just fine on my own, Michael. I don't need you to fix me. What I need is for you to respect me. And that means respecting my choices." There was a pause, a long, heavy silence. Before he spoke again. "Fine," he said, his voice tight. "But don't expect me to just stand by and watch you waste away in this place." He turned and walked into the house without another word, the door slamming behind him. Linda gave me one last look, her eyes filled with pity, and followed him inside. Jack, however, lingered by the porch, his eyes locked on me. I stood there for a moment, staring at him. His silence was unnerving, and I didn't know what to make of it. Finally, he spoke, his voice low. "You know," he began, "you're making a big mistake." I met his gaze, my heart pounding in my chest. "I'm not the one making a mistake," I said, my voice steady. "The mistake is thinking you can walk in here and take what's mine." He didn't respond right away, but I could see something flicker in his eyes, something darker, something I hadn't noticed before. And then, just as quickly, it was gone, replaced by that same cold stare. "You'll regret this," he said, turning and walking into the house, leaving me standing there on the porch, more alone than I had ever felt, but I wasn't scared. Not anymore. I knew what I had to do. And I would do it. For my home. For my family. For me. The house felt colder that evening, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones. After Michael and his parents went inside, I stayed out on the porch, staring at the fading light in the sky. It wasn't even the thought of them trying to sell my house that unsettled me. It was the way they treated me, the way they assumed I would just roll over and let them take it. Michael's words echoed in my mind, and I knew deep down that something more was at play here, something that went beyond the house, beyond his supposed concern for my well-being. I had to know what it was. It was later that night when I heard it, the hushed voices coming from the kitchen, the low murmurs that I wasn't meant to hear. I had been sitting by the fire, the quiet crackle of the wood filling the silence, when I noticed it. The kitchen light was on, and through the crack in the door, I could see the shadows moving. Michael's voice was barely audible, but it carried an edge I hadn't heard before. He wasn't angry. He was plotting. "She's not going to budge, is she?" Michael said, his voice tight with frustration. I couldn't make out Linda's reply, but whatever she said, it only seemed to make things worse. I stood frozen, my breath caught in my throat. The cold that had settled into my bones deepened as I listened. This wasn't just about the house. This was about something bigger, something they were hiding from me. There was a plot, a plan, and I wasn't in it. The words that followed made my heart race. "We'll have to do it the hard way," Michael said, his tone low but unmistakably serious. "It's not like she'll leave on her own. She's too stubborn. But if we push her enough, if we make her think it's the only option, she'll have no choice but to agree." I felt a chill run down my spine. Push me enough? Make me think it was the only option? What were they planning? The anger that had been simmering inside me suddenly flared to life. This wasn't just a conversation about selling a house. This was about control, about forcing me into a corner where I had no choice but to give in. But it wasn't just Michael who was in on this. Linda's voice was quiet, but it carried a sense of guilt that didn't sit well with me. "Maybe we should give her some space. Let her come to the decision herself." "I don't want to make things worse," she said. For the first time, I heard a hint of doubt in her voice. But it was fleeting, replaced by Michael's steely resolve. "She won't come around on her own. We've been patient long enough. If we give her time, she'll just dig in deeper. It's time to act." I wanted to confront them right then and there. I wanted to burst into that kitchen and demand the truth. But I stayed still, hidden in the shadows, listening to the betrayal unfold before me. I had to hear it all. I had to understand what they were really planning. The voices died down after a while, but the weight of their words lingered in the air, thick and suffocating. I knew now that this wasn't just about the house, it was about something more. Something I wasn't yet seeing. But I would find out what it was. I had to. I didn't sleep much that night. The house was quiet, too quiet. My mind kept racing, turning over every word I had heard. I had been careful, so careful to protect this place, this life that I had built. But now, I realized, I wasn't just fighting for my home. I was fighting for the truth, for my family's respect, for my dignity, for my right to decide what happened to me. The next morning, I made my decision. I couldn't let them take what was mine, and I couldn't let them believe for 1 second that I was powerless. I would confront Michael, confront Linda and Jack, and I would make sure they knew exactly who they were dealing with. The stakes were higher now. This wasn't just about a house anymore. It was about justice, and I wasn't about to let anyone, least of all my own family, steal that from me. The morning came with a sense of finality hanging over me. Like a storm on the horizon, just waiting to break. I'd made my decision the night before. I couldn't stay silent anymore. I couldn't let them get away with what they were planning. I knew what I had to do, and I wasn't going to let them manipulate me any longer. I would stand my ground out. I spent the morning in the garden, tending to the flowers and vegetables that had always brought me peace. There was something about working with the earth, watching things grow, that kept me grounded. But today, even the flowers seemed to whisper their warnings. Their petals trembling in the morning breeze, as if they too could sense the tension in the air. When Michael came out later, his usual cheerful demeanor was gone. He looked at me, his brow furrowed, like he was searching for something. He walked over slowly, hands in his pockets, his expression guarded. "Mom," he started, his voice soft but strained, "can we talk? I think we need to figure this out." I didn't respond immediately, giving him a moment to let the silence stretch between us. The birds chirped around us, oblivious to the storm I could feel brewing in the air. Finally, I spoke, my voice steady but full of resolve. We need to talk, all right. But this time, you're going to hear what I have to say. I looked him in the eye, and for the first time in days, I saw a flicker of doubt cross his face. He wasn't expecting this. Mom, please, he said, his voice pleading. You're not thinking clearly. This house, it's too much for you. It's not just about what's easy for us. It's about what's best for you. We want you to be safe. He reached out as if to touch my arm, but I stepped back, not letting him get any closer. Don't tell me what's best for me, Michael, I said, my voice hard now. This house is mine, and I'm not going anywhere. You and your father are trying to push me into something I don't want, and I won't stand for it. I heard everything last night. All of it. His face went pale. For a moment, he looked like a man caught in a lie, like a child who had just been caught doing something wrong. But then, he tried to recover. He tried to shift the blame, to make it seem like I was the one who was in the wrong. Mom, you're twisting things, he said quickly, though his voice lacked conviction. We weren't trying to. You're lying, I interrupted, my anger flaring up. You and your father. You were talking about forcing me out of here. About making me think it's my only option. I took a deep breath, the words heavy in my chest, but I forced them out. You don't get to do that. Not to me. Not to my home. Michael looked away, unable to meet my eyes. I could see the conflict on his face, but I also saw something else, a realization that this was no longer just a matter of convincing me. This was a matter of me standing up for myself, for my life. You know, Michael, I continued, you've made a mistake. You and your father both. You thought you could take what was mine without me noticing. You thought I wouldn't fight back. I took a step closer to him, my voice lowering, but becoming more firm. You underestimated me. And now you're going to pay for it. His eyes widened slightly, and for a moment, I thought I saw fear flicker in them. But it was quickly replaced by a scowl, his jaw tightening. What do you mean, pay for it, Mom? He asked, his voice rising. You're acting like we've done something terrible. I shook my head. You have. You just don't realize it yet. And that's when I saw Jack standing at the edge of the garden, watching us with that same unreadable expression on his face. He hadn't said a word, but his presence was enough. He was the final piece of this puzzle. He was the one who had been pulling the strings, the one who had been whispering in Michael's ear, the one who thought he could make me do whatever he wanted. I turned to him, my eyes narrowing. Jack, I said, my voice cold. This was never about family, was it? This was about control. About taking what I've built and making it yours. He didn't respond, but I saw the flicker of guilt in his eyes. You've been behind this all along, haven't you? I asked, my voice steady, knowing the truth now. You never cared about me. You never cared about my home. You just wanted to get your hands on it. Jack's face hardened, and for a moment, I thought he might say something, but then he just turned and walked away, disappearing back into the house. His silence spoke volumes. Michael stood there, silent now, looking at me like he didn't know who I was anymore. But I wasn't going to let him off the hook. Not now, not ever. Now you know, I said softly. I'm not going anywhere. This house is mine. And you can't take it from me. I turned and walked back toward the house, feeling a sense of victory, of control, that I hadn't felt in days. I wasn't going to let them win. Not today. Not ever. The air inside the house was thick with tension as I stepped through the door, my heart pounding in my chest. The confrontation with Michael and Jack had only just begun, but I could already feel the weight of what was coming. Michael had retreated to the living room, pacing like a caged animal, his frustration palpable. Linda was sitting on the couch, her hands nervously wringing a tissue, her eyes darting between me and Michael as though she couldn't decide whose side she was on. Jack had disappeared upstairs, avoiding eye contact. And I knew that meant he was the one who had the most to lose. I closed the door behind me with a soft click and took a deep breath. The stillness of the house somehow more oppressive now that I knew the truth. They had underestimated me, thought they could outmaneuver me and take what was mine without facing the consequences. But I wasn't going to let them get away with it. Not now, not ever. Michael turned as I entered the room, his face a mix of guilt and defiance. Mom, he began, his voice shaking slightly, "You've got to understand. We're just trying to do what's best for you." He took a step toward me, his hand outstretched, but I held up my own, stopping him in his tracks. "No, Michael," I said firmly, my voice steady. "This isn't about what's best for me. This is about you getting what you want, and using me as an excuse to do it." He flinched at my words, but I didn't care. It was the truth, and it needed to be said. "Mom, please," he said, his voice pleading now. "I never meant for it to go this far. But you're making this harder than it has to be. If you would just listen, I've listened to enough lies, Michael," I cut him off, my voice hardening. "And I'm done. You're not going to walk in here and tear apart my life, not without a fight. I've spent years building this house, this life. And you don't get to take it from me just because it's convenient for you." I could feel the anger rising in me, a fire that had been smoldering for too long. "You don't understand, do you?" I continued, my voice shaking now, but not with fear. With righteous fury. "This isn't just about a house. It's about respect. It's about you thinking you can control me, push me around like I'm some kind of fool." Michael's face twisted in frustration, his fists clenching at his sides. "You're being stubborn. You're refusing to see reason." His voice was growing louder now, and I could tell he was getting desperate. "We're just trying to make things easier for you, Mom. You don't have to be alone anymore. You don't have to live in this big, old house. We're a family. We want to be there for you." I shook my head. "No, Michael. You want what's easiest for you. You want to take me out of the picture so you can get your hands on what's mine." I looked over at Linda, who was still sitting quietly on the couch, her eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and concern. "And you, Linda," I said, my tone softening just slightly, "you've been complicit in this. You let it happen. You didn't stop it. You didn't even try." Linda's eyes welled with tears, and she bit her lip, looking down at her hands. "I didn't know what to do," she said quietly. "I didn't want to make things worse." "Making things worse?" I echoed, incredulous. "You're telling me that letting them walk all over me wasn't making things worse?" I could see the conflict in her eyes, the doubt, the regret. And for a moment, just a brief moment, I wondered if I could forgive her. But the truth was, this wasn't about forgiveness. This was about standing up for what was mine. For myself. Just then, Jack appeared at the top of the stairs, standing in the doorway to the living room, his expression as unreadable as ever. "This needs to stop," he said, his voice low but firm. "You're all making a scene over something that doesn't matter." I turned to face him, my heart beating faster as I took a step toward him. "Oh, it matters, Jack," I said coldly. "It matters a great deal. This isn't just about the house, or me being stubborn. This is about the lies you've all been telling. The manipulation. The scheming." My eyes locked onto his, and for the first time, I saw something shift in him, a crack in his stoic exterior. "You thought you could get away with it, didn't you?" I continued, my voice gaining strength with every word. "You thought you could just waltz in here and take control, make decisions without me. Well, you were wrong." I took another step forward, my chest rising with each breath. "I'm not some pawn in your game, Jack. And I'm not going to let you win." Jack's eyes flickered with something that might have been regret, but it was quickly masked by his usual cool demeanor. "You don't know what you're doing," he said quietly, his voice devoid of the conviction it had held earlier. "You're going to regret this." I didn't flinch. "No, Jack," I said softly, "I think you'll be the one regretting it." There was a long pause, and for a moment, no one spoke. The room was heavy with the weight of everything unsaid. But I knew in that moment, with absolute certainty, that I had won. This was my house, my life, and no one, not even family, was going to take that from me. "Get out," I said finally, my voice calm but resolute. "You've made your intentions clear. You're not welcome here anymore." Michael, Jack, and Linda stood frozen for a moment, the tension thick in the air. Then, slowly, they turned and walked out, each one leaving without a word, and just like that, the storm passed. The house was quiet again, but I knew, deep down, that the fight wasn't over. There was still more to be done. And I was ready for it. The house felt different after they left. The silence was deeper, more profound, and I could feel the weight of the moment settling in my bones. I had stood my ground, made my decision, and driven them out. But as the door closed behind them, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of emptiness. Like I had won the battle but lost something else along the way. That I sat down in my favorite chair by the window. The same one my husband used to sit in when he was alive. The sunlight streamed through the glass, casting long shadows on the floor, and for a moment, I allowed myself to simply be still. To breathe. To reflect. I'd spent years building this home, shaping it into something that felt like me. Every nail, every piece of wood had a story, a memory attached to it. My husband and I had poured our love into this place, turning it from a mere structure into a sanctuary, a place of peace. And now, Michael and his family had tried to take that from me, tried to force me out of the very home that held all those memories, but I wasn't going to let them. I couldn't. I had fought too hard for too long to let it all slip away. My strength, my independence, it was a part of me, woven into the very fabric of this house. And that strength wasn't something they could take, no matter how hard they tried. I looked around the room, my eyes resting on the small photo of my husband on the mantel. His face, smiling that warm, loving smile, reminded me of everything I had once known to be true. And in that moment, I knew I had done the right thing. The path ahead wasn't going to be easy. I knew there would be more battles to fight, more things to face. Michael would likely come back with more arguments, more pleas. But this time, I wasn't going to back down. I had learned, over the years, that sometimes you had to be your own protector, your own defender. You couldn't always rely on others to do it for you. The fight wasn't about the house anymore. It was about my right to live my life on my terms. To be the woman I had always been, strong, independent, and unyielding in the face of adversity. I had spent too much of my life putting others first, making sacrifices for the people I loved. But this time, it was about me. And I wasn't going to let anyone, not even my own family, take that from me. I heard the soft creak of the back door opening, and I turned to see Emily walking into the room. She was quiet at first, her eyes scanning the room, taking in the aftermath of the confrontation. She had been gone when everything had happened, but I knew she had heard the tension, the raised voices. "Mom," she said softly, her voice filled with concern, "are you okay?" I smiled at her, the warmth of her presence filling the room. "I'm fine, sweetheart," I said, my voice steady, though I could feel the lump in my throat. I just needed to clear my head. She stepped closer, sitting down beside me on the couch, her hand resting gently on mine. "You don't have to do this alone," she said, her voice filled with a mix of worry and love. "I know you're strong, but you don't have to carry all this by yourself." I squeezed her hand, a surge of affection rushing through me. "I know, darling. But sometimes, we have to fight our own battles. And this was one I had to fight alone." She nodded, her eyes filled with understanding. "I get it. But just know, I'm here. Always." I looked at my daughter, my heart swelling with pride. She was my strength, my reason for keeping going. And in that moment, I knew that, no matter what came next, I wasn't alone. I had built a legacy of love and strength, and that was something no one could take from me. "Thank you," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for always being there." We sat in silence for a few moments, the weight of the situation still hanging in the air, but it wasn't as heavy anymore. With Emily by my side, I felt like I could face whatever came next, and then, as if on cue, the wind picked up outside, rustling the leaves on the trees. The sound was soft, comforting, like a lullaby, and I closed my eyes, letting the peacefulness of it wash over me. There was still work to be done, decisions to be made. But for now, in this quiet moment, I allowed myself the space to breathe, to heal, to be, and I knew that whatever came next, I would face it with the same strength and resolve that had carried me through everything else, because in the end, it wasn't about the house, or the family, or the battles we fought. It was about holding on to what mattered most, the people we love, the strength we carry, and the dignity we never lose. No matter what life throws our way. A few days had passed since the confrontation, and the house felt quieter than ever. The tension that had lingered in the air like smoke after a fire was finally starting to settle. But even in the silence, I couldn't shake the feeling that the battle wasn't quite over. Michael, Jack, and Linda had left, but I knew they would be back. And when they did, I would be ready. I spent my days going through old photo albums, remembering the past, and walking through the woods, listening to the rustle of the trees. Life was moving forward, but I couldn't help but think about the decisions that had led me here. The things I had fought for and the things I had lost. One afternoon, as I sat on the porch watching the sun begin to set, I heard the unmistakable sound of tires crunching on gravel. My heart skipped a beat. I wasn't surprised, but I wasn't sure I was ready for what was coming. I stood up slowly, taking a deep breath, and watched as Michael's car pulled into the driveway. This time, he wasn't alone. Linda was with him, and, to my surprise, so was Emily. I felt a sharp pang of anxiety in my chest. Why was she here? What was going on? Michael stepped out of the car first, his expression grim, his posture stiff. Linda followed, her face a mask of concern, and Emily came around the back, looking at me with an unreadable expression. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me. This wasn't just a visit anymore. It was a reckoning. "Mom," Michael said quietly, his voice filled with something I hadn't heard before, regret. "We need to talk." I nodded, my arms crossed, standing my ground. "I'm listening," I said, my voice calm but firm. He glanced over at Linda, who was standing beside him, looking almost apologetic. "We've been talking," Michael continued. "And I realize now that we made a mistake. I pushed you too far. I shouldn't have tried to force you into something you didn't want." He paused, taking a deep breath. "I'm sorry." The words hung in the air, and for a moment, I wasn't sure how to respond. Michael had always been quick to justify his actions, quick to push me aside. But this was different. This was him admitting that he had gone too far. I looked at him for a long moment, my heart heavy with a mixture of emotions. Part of me wanted to accept his apology, to let the anger go and move on. But another part of me knew that I couldn't let this slide. Not this time. "It's not just about the apology, Michael," I said slowly, my voice filled with quiet strength. "It's about respect. You didn't just make a mistake, you tried to take something that wasn't yours. You tried to control my life without considering what I wanted or needed." He lowered his head, his face red with shame. "I know," he said quietly. "And I'm sorry for that. I should have listened to you from the beginning. You've always been strong, Mom. I was wrong to think I could make decisions for you." I nodded slowly, absorbing his words. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment when Michael finally understood. But I couldn't let it be enough. Not yet. "Michael," I said, my voice steady, "I don't need your apology. I don't need your approval. But I do need you to understand something. I'm not going to let anyone push me around, not even my own family. I've spent my life building something, and I'm not going to let it be torn down by anyone, no matter who they are." I took a deep breath and looked at Emily, who had been standing silently at the back of the group, her eyes flicking between us. "And that includes you?" "Emily," I said, my voice softening just a little. "I know you love your father, but you have to understand that this isn't about him being right. This is about me standing up for what I've worked for what I believe in." Emily took a step forward, her eyes brimming with emotion. "I know, Mom," she said quietly. I just wanted things to be easier. For all of us." She wiped her eyes quickly, trying to keep her composure. "But I understand now. I see why you did what you did." I walked over to her and pulled her into a hug, feeling the weight of everything that had happened over the past few days. "I'm not perfect, sweetheart," I whispered into her hair. "But I'll always fight for what's mine. And I'll always fight for you." We stood there for a long moment, just holding each other, and when we finally pulled away, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The battle wasn't over, but this chapter had ended. And in that moment, I realized that sometimes standing up for yourself wasn't just about winning, it was about teaching those you love the importance of respect, honesty, and integrity. Michael and Linda stayed for a while longer. And we talked. Not about the house or the past, but about moving forward. About how we could rebuild the bridges that had been burned, piece by piece. And when they finally left, I felt a sense of quiet resolution settle over me. I had fought for my home, for my dignity, and for my family. And though the road ahead was still uncertain, I knew one thing for sure: I would face whatever came next with strength, with grace, and with the unshakable belief that I had done the right thing. As I stood on the porch, Watching Michael and Linda drive away, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The silence that followed their departure was different from the emptiness I had felt before. It wasn't a void. It was peace. For the first time in days, I could breathe, knowing that I had stood firm and protected what was mine. But even in the quiet, there was still something lingering, a sense of closure mixed with the reality that the fight had taken its toll. The battle for my home, for my dignity, wasn't just about the house. It was about something deeper, something that stretched across years of family dynamics, love, betrayal, and forgiveness. I turned and walked back inside, the door closing softly behind me. It was the first time in a long while that I felt like I was walking into a space that truly belonged to me, a place I had fought for. I sank into my favorite chair by the window, the one that had been my husband's, and I allowed myself a moment of stillness. The sun was setting, casting golden light across the room. And I thought about all that had brought me here, the strength, the lessons learned, and the love I had always had for this home. I looked around, taking in the familiar sights, the old pictures on the walls, the quilts my husband had helped me make, the wooden beams that had always felt like a shelter. This place wasn't just a house. It was a testament to everything I had endured and overcome. It was my legacy. And it was mine to keep. As the evening grew darker, I realized that this story wasn't just about fighting for what's yours, it was about learning to respect yourself enough to defend your boundaries. To stand up when everything in your life seems to be slipping away. And when you do, you find the strength to heal, to rebuild, and to move forward with a renewed sense of peace. Before I leave you, I want to thank you for joining me on this journey. Sometimes, the hardest battles lead to the most rewarding victories. And I hope this story has reminded you of the importance of standing firm, even when the world tries to push you down. If you've enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, turn on the little bell for notifications, and leave a comment letting me know where you're watching from. It really helps us reach more people and continue sharing these stories. Thank you for watching, and remember, your strength is yours to keep, no matter what life throws your way.